Hi all! For today's video on September 12th, 2019, I thought that I would do a walking around our place here in Texas, sort of a tour, kind of show you some of the things that Dave and I have done here and just chat, like whatever comes to mind. So let's get started. Over there is obviously a house. It is a straw bale house. It's about 916 square feet total, and Dave and I built this house. We drew up the plans for it ourselves and did almost all the work. We hired a couple of guys to help us on the day that the concrete truck showed up for us to pour the slab for the foundation. But other than that, we did every single other thing, just the two of us. And yeah, that was a labor of love, to be sure. So anyway, panning around over here on this corner of our property is our garden area, which right now is fallow. And if you don't know what that means, it means it's just fancy talk terminology for when you let the ground rest and you're not trying to grow anything on it. So the first thing that we built when we moved to this property in 2009 was this big garden fence that you see that surrounds the garden area, and it is very tall because we've got deer around here like oats, and they definitely will come and make a buffet of your gardens. Anyway, we constructed this fence, and we used to grow a huge garden back before we started traveling. Now it's kind of difficult to do that because a garden takes a lot of work. You have to be here for it. We made this garden gate. Dave cut out this piece up here and over here. He cut that out with a plasma cutter that we have, and that did look better up there in the past, but it's been 10 years since I painted that, and I have plans that I'm going to redo it, and it's going to be different. This is the latch for our gate, and there's a story behind this. We found both this gear and this big huge wrench buried in the soil here on the property, as we have found a great many artifacts from previous inhabitants. And so we integrated them and made a door or a garden latch out of them. Dave, he's the one that put it together, and I just suggested that we use them somehow. And I'm really good at coming up with ideas, and Dave is really good at making them happen. Let's go into the garden, and I'll show you another little surprise. I love little things like hidden throughout my property. And so I made this out of concrete. It's right here by our water spigot, and it's just this little happy person, this little forest nymph or whatever your imagination brings to mind. And so she's out here greeting you when you come out to turn the water on to water the garden. These little plants all over the place are some of this scarlet sage that I've talked about before. And I started out with 2 plants of this stuff that I got from a thrift store, and it was so prolific that it's spreading everywhere now. I've got this huge bunch of it here, and it's going to town other places on the property as well. So we come out here and we've got all of these pecan trees, which are making pecans now. Let's see if I can find some to show you. I want to tell you all, the proper pronunciation is pecan, okay? Don't be given none of that pecan stuff. A pecan is something that truck drivers use, not so they don't have to stop to go to the bathroom. There's some right there. And pecans aren't really a nut. They are considered to be a drupe. So there you go, learn something new every day. Here is a fig tree that started out its life as a cutting, and unfortunately it's not making any figs, and I think that's because I have it in too shady of a spot. This is a big apricot tree, and it's starting to lose its leaves already, which is totally normal for this time of the year. The pecan trees, they keep getting bigger and bigger, and I think this winter or maybe late spring we're going to come out here and trim back this side of this tree because it's starting to encroach upon like the garden growing area too much. And I think that we will definitely utilize this garden space again in the future. It's just like lately in the last couple of years we were traveling and being gone in the summer, so that didn't happen. So jungle out here right now that it's like weeds, what most people would call weeds, but they aren't really weeds. Okay, that's just a dirty word for plants that we don't like growing where they are. But every plant has a purpose and a reason why it's growing in a certain spot, and it's beneficial and it's doing its job. It's just sometimes we don't like the way it looks or other properties, so we call it a weed and we want to get rid of it. So there's a lot of weeds out here. They're not being productive for feeding us, so eventually they will have to be cut back, and they're not going to be allowed to like live here forever. We've got other peach trees growing out here. This one actually made us peaches this year. This is a white peach that I started from seeds, and there are some more over there along that fence line that you can't see because of all the weeds. But I really want to come out here and start building raised beds, because I just think that will be so much easier. Like, Dave and I aren't getting any younger, and if we intend to stay here, then I would like to garden out here more because I love growing my own food. However, it's getting tough to bend over, and it's just so hard. It's really hard to grow things in Texas, y'all. I'm telling you, you got like the heat, you got hard compacted clay soils, you've got the bugs. So like, I just believe that building some raised beds will allow me the opportunity to combat all of those things I mentioned a lot more effectively. And also, it's just I want to yield more results for my efforts, because gardening is hard work, and you don't want to do all that work and then not have a good return on the investment. Look at this big spider. Check that out. My thoughts on gardening: I don't like to use pesticides or artificial fertilizers. I am not like so opposed to it that I'm religiously against it. Like, for instance, around the foundation of our house, I have sprayed some insecticide stuff before, but I try to use it super minimal, and I use it as a last resort. And I've tried natural things for stuff like with around the house. It's usually the ants and trying to come in, carpenter ants especially, and we can't have that. Like, they can't come in the house. That's where I draw the line. They're perfectly welcome to live outside here, and I love a thriving biodiversity and ecosystem on my property. That's what I'm aiming for. That's what I want to promote. And so that's why I don't want to use pesticides and chemicals and stuff like that on the land. But sometimes you got to draw a line in the sand, and I have had to use some pesticides around the foundation of the house, and that's like the only place though that we use that kind of thing. Out here in the garden, I have always used natural methods to try to combat the insects, which comes with varying levels of success. Over here adjacent to the garden, we have this, I'm gonna call it a shed, and this was on the property when we arrived here, when we bought it. So we didn't build this, and it's honestly, it's kind of fallen apart. It wasn't built with like treated lumber or anything, and so around here we've got carpenter ants, termites a little bit. They're not too horrible, but those creatures are eating the wood, and it wasn't really constructed great to begin with. So it's fallen apart. Like, the wind is trying to take it. We've like wired it together a couple of times, but really what we need to do and what our plan is to tear this down. We just hadn't done it to this point because we really needed the dry storage area. Like, we keep our firewood under here, and we used to have goats and pigs and stuff like that. If y'all have followed along here long enough, then you will have seen in the past my videos back when we had all of that. So we used this also for a dry space for keeping goats and doing stuff with our animals and whatnot. Anyway, it's pretty pretty raggedy and whatever, but it served a purpose. And now it's approaching the end of its time here, and hopefully we'll be able to replace it with something better. And yeah, that's in the future. So moving on, over here we've got our totally makeshift goat pen. Once again, not super attractive, and there are no more goats, so there's not really functioning as anything now. And so we may tear all of this down too, but I'm telling y'all, ripping these T-posts and stuff out of the ground, not fun. So anyway, there's the goat shed, and it also is coming apart because our goats always wanted to remodel. Every time we would put it together, they would come out here and try to take the walls down on it. I think they were preferring like an open air design. And then we've got this wonderful truck cap out here that was a free thing that we got when we moved to Texas. We needed a cap for our truck, and somebody had this sitting out in their yard for free, so we picked it up, and it served the purpose great. Anyway, it served as a goat shelter and goat playground for many years. And believe it or not, the goats would crawl underneath there, and they loved it. Like, I think they actually preferred this to the little house that we built for them. Go figure. Anyway, it's getting pretty grown up out here. Not much else I can say about this right now. Let's just go over here and talk a bit about this building. This also was on the property whenever we arrived here. All of it, like this little lean-to part tacked onto the side, and the block building, which was actually attached through like some weird thing to an old farmhouse that used to be over there that we have since torn down. So right now this is kind of serving as a really messy area. It's got our like trash and stuff in it. We live a million miles away from anywhere to get your trash taken care of, so we have to like hoard it for a while, and then we load it into the back of the truck and take it away. So, but anyway, this is where that happens for now. And it's not, you know, this might be kind of, we're thinking maybe where we build something else, like a little bigger building once we tear that down, and we would like to have some more covered space. So yeah, the block building, it serves as our workshop, tool area. You've been in here before on one side, and then on the other side, when we moved here, this glass door thing wasn't here. This was just had a window in it, and we lived in here. Like, I'm not kidding. This room was basically, we had our bed in there. We had like bug net over the bed because this house was not impenetrable to insects of great sizes and varieties. And there's nothing quite as alarming as waking up in the middle of the night with some huge, like, I'm talking like this big insect crawling across you. Whether it means you any harm or not, you just don't want to be doing that. So we had a bug screen over our bed, and it was very like we were on safari or something. That's being positive about it. But it worked for us, and we had like our office in there, and we mostly stayed in there. And then this was connected by this part, which also is just got some like a few boxes and stuff like that in it right now. This structure here was not here. This is something Dave and I started, and apparently is not going to, we changed our mind, it's not happening. Anyway, it was going to be a greenhouse, but this building over here is really falling apart. It's not good. It needs to be probably just removed, salvage the materials as much as we can and do something better with it. But this long part, the white part back there, was attached over here to like some other additions. And then these other additions were attached to a farmhouse that used to be right in this area. Very small, little wood frame, no insulation, holes in the floor house. And I may try to find a picture and insert it. There was like the front like porch steps to it over there, which is still there. And that had our kitchen and our bathroom in it. And I'm going to tell you a fun little story about living in that house in the winter. We lived here during the hottest summer, I think, on record for Texas, and also some of the coldest winter. And we would go into the bathroom and there'd be like ice in the bathtub and stuff. So that was quite the experience, and I think it was good for us. But I'm glad that we don't have that situation now. All these oak trees, beautiful, beautiful. This is one of the things that made us fall in love with this property. And I have mentioned in the past about the oak wilt that's like plaguing Texas. Real scary, super scary. It might end up taking all of these trees. So I come out here all the time and tell these trees that I love them and how much I appreciate them, and I just come stand under them and give gratitude and appreciation for the time that I get to spend with them alive. And I hope and hope and hope that I am wrong and that this oak wilt is not going to take all of these trees, but time will tell. And you know, nature, it does its thing, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about that, and you just have to learn to live and let go. Okay, so there's the road in front of our place. This road is paved, and it's a state-maintained road, but it dead ends several miles in that direction into gravel county roads. So there's not a lot of traffic on this road, and that's wonderful. We have about a little more than 6 acres here, and it's divided by the road. So it used to be a square, and now it's 2 triangles. So we live on one side in the triangle, and on the other side of the road, over beyond these trees, there's more trees. That also is our property, and there's a little creek that runs through it. And there's a little shed over there. We used to run our goats across the road, and they would go spend the day over there. Anyway, it's about equal size to this side of the road. And it's a jungle over there, and I may take you over there too. We'll see. I've been over there before in the past in videos. Standing in the driveway, looking at the front of the house. Over here I've got my clothesline, and I love to use that so I don't have to run the dryer. Then you walked out in the driveway, and we've got the front here and the gate, which we keep shut because it keeps the riffraff out. You can see more across the road over here, the other part of our property. That might have to be part 2 of this video. We keep a trail mode around the perimeter of our property because we love to come out here and walk around. We've got all sorts of native species of plants and grasses and stuff growing out here. In the spring, this gets covered with different kinds of wildflowers. It's so beautiful. There's even wildflowers out here now as well. We get flowers really big in the spring here, and then in the summer some species do okay, but it's so hot that a lot of stuff kind of takes a break. And then in the fall we get a second round of different types of flowers that bloom, so that's nice. This little tree is a mesquite tree. Got some more live oak trees here. This is a highway. This is a super highway of wildlife. And we see the deer come across here all the time. They come across this corner of our property. And in the mornings early, if we're quiet when we get up in the morning, they'll be underneath the oak trees. And this time of the year, the oaks are making acorns, and the deer love to eat them. So they come up and they eat the acorns, and they even bed down under these trees sometimes. There's a fence line, and this area over here is owned by a guy who doesn't live around here. That's super common for this part of the world. People buy big tracts of land. These people that do ranching and stuff, they buy them and they're like scattered all over the place. And so like our property neighbor here does not live here. I don't even know where he lives. I've never even spoken to him because we've never seen him. I think Dave might have seen him once. At any rate, this is where Donkita lives, and he's got some cattle and sheep in here, and Donkita hangs out with the sheep. This is a red ant mound that has been here since we moved here, and right now they're not real active. I'm not sure why, but at any rate, seems like they're all tucked in. Here, let me see if I can rouse them. Oh, see, somebody's coming out to peek at me. But they live down here, and they've got little highways that they make through the grass. And Dave and I find them interesting, and we don't bother them. Like I said, if things are outside and they're not trying to assault me in my house or tear my stuff down, I'm live and let live. Moving on, we're coming back up to kind of the south side of the house in this direction. That's to the south. We've got this hill over here, and it's called, I found out, Lookout Mountain. And there's a story that I found on the internet about like this big battle that happened between some Indians that lived around here. I believe they were Comanche, and some of the white settlers in the area, and somebody got killed, and they had a big fight, and then some guy went up on the top of Lookout Mountain over here, and I'll see if I can't leave a link to that story in the description down beneath this video if y'all want to go check that out. Okay, I didn't really take y'all over here on this other part of the property. Over here we've got another pecan tree, and then that fence line is our property, and on the other side is that same property owner guy that, like, who knows where he's at. And it runs straight down over to the road, which is over there. And then there's another corner to the triangle over there. And then there's a little house across from us over there that no one lives at. It's like their weekend kind of place. They show up, I don't know, maybe a dozen times during the course of a year. There's someone there. The other house over here, people do live at that. Then we've got another neighbor that's over there that you can't really see. There's a lot of houses out here that no one lives in. It's just people own property and they live elsewhere, and they come here only on weekends and holidays. Now we're behind the block building, and over behind it is our well, and it is a private well. Anyway, this is it. And this other tree over here, and I don't even want to say this because it's such a bummer, but this is the other tree that I spoke about in another video that's dying of the oak wilt. And that's the very concerning part, is that we have a couple of trees now, and once this stuff is on your place, like all the trees close to it seem like they get it. I don't even like talking about it because it's so bums me out. But this tree is so huge, y'all. Look at it. It used to be so full and beautiful. And I mean, this tree was here when there were still buffalo in Texas. And it's so enormous. Gotta watch out for snakes. That's why I'm wearing boots. Anyway, I'm serious. Like, look at the size of this trunk and these branches. The branches on it are bigger than most trunks, and it's absolutely enormous. And is so sad that it is dying of this oak wilt. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that anymore. So moving on, let's get out of here. Okay, so I think that's it for this video. I'm sure this one's going to be long enough already without taking you over to the other side of the property. Over there it's just super jungle, and we've got that little creek. It tends to dry up this time of the year. We haven't had very much rain in a while, so it's probably dry, but it does run in the spring and when we have a lot of rain. This year it ran for a really long time, but that will have to be a video for a different day. For now, I'm gonna end it, and I hope that you enjoyed this little tour of the property. And if you got any questions or comments, you can leave them down below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Bye, y'all.